dreams collide. High road roaring every night. Spotlight on Spurs, feel the fight. Spotlight on Spurs. Take the field. This is passion, nothing concealed. Through the tackles, joy ignites. Spotlight on Spurs, burning lights. Feel the tempo, sweet and wild. London's warriors never mild. Every challenge we endure. Spotlight.
What's up, guys? Luke here from Spotlight on Spurs. There's never a dull day at Spurs, is there? Never, ever a dull day. Who would have thought that woke up today and gone, Daniel Levy will be stepping down at Tottenham Hotspur? Absolutely crazy. Literally, as we're going live, there's constantly some more information coming out about this. There are some big smiley faces on the panel. I'm not gonna point, and we're not going to point fingers at who seems to be smiling the most, but there are a few happy campers in in the camp tonight. Massive thank you to the guys that are joining us. Gary is on the show making his debut. Gary, appreciate coming on, mate. Thank you very much. How are we doing?
Yeah, doing great, Luke. Thanks for having me, mate. Good to be here with Jose and Connor as well. And I'm pretty shocked, if I'm honest. I'm pretty shocked. I just I didn't wake up this morning and expect this to drop.
We should never be shocked.
No, I thought we were just going to talk about Champions League squads, really, and trying to think of anything else we can drum up. But Daniel Levy's gone. Feels strange.
Certainly does. We are going to go to him last because he looks the most happy out of everybody. But Jose, how are we doing, sir? Thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thanks for having me, Luke. It's a pleasure to be on for the first time with Gary and with Connor. When you asked me to come on the show, I saw what the banner was all about. It was all about the Champions League squad, the transfer window, what we see probably going in the future, into the rest of the season, or what our thoughts are at the moment. And then that's all changed since you set the show up because of the events that have happened today. We are going to discuss it. It's obvious it's a hot topic. We are going to discuss it. I'm looking forward to hearing what people's thoughts are, because some people are more into it than others. Some people are more vehemently about it than others. I'm glad to hear from all sides what people's thoughts are.
Yeah, completely agree. And there will be positives and negatives on both sides, but we know that Levy has been a pain in the backside for this final guest for quite a while. So much so that even now he's leaving, it still means that Connor has to do something about his ex name, because that's going to have to go down. So Connor, how are we feeling?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. It's good to be on. I think it's very timely that I'm on after letting you down a couple of weeks ago. So it's good timing. As you say, my ex name might need to change, mightn't it? But at the moment, I'm going to leave it as is. It's my legacy on on X. So we'll see. But I'm good, mate. A lot to digest with this news. I think, as the guys said, obviously there was the rumours in the early summer, but I think we're all surprised that it's happened today, and a lot to discuss, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And as I say, as we're going through it, there's more and more coming out. So obviously the statement that was released, just very much in quick summary, I'm sure everyone's seen it by now, unless you really have been living under a rock. But it was essentially on the lines of Levy has resigned, and there will be no further investment by a takeover or anything like that. It's very much as is with Enoch, which is going to come as a massive shock to the fan base. And I think a lot of people are underestimating just how long Levy's been in charge. So there's a lot of people that are probably mid-30s and younger has probably only ever known this man to be the chairman, because let's be honest, we could have been supporting the club at 8, but we'd have no idea about ownership or anything like that. So anyone that's, as I say, kind of mid 30s would only have known Daniel Levy. It's almost like a Sir Alex Ferguson, where fans of Man United grew up and all of they knew was this. So is this just another thing where we've taken someone out like a manager, but everything is just going to stay continuation of exactly how it previously worked? It's all to see. But just as an overview, obviously everybody is completely kind of shocked and still is about the announcement. But Gary, where do you kind of sit with it all? What is your kind of initial kind of first impressions of this as a move by? And again, it seems that Tottenham are the ones that have initiated this, not Daniel Levy. Where do you kind of sit with it all?
I'm mixed views, really. I'm very much like Connor. I've always, as time's progressed on, I've kind of wanted to see him depart the club, and that's nothing gone personal, anything like that. And look what he's done commercially for the club. But I have my biggest gripe, I guess, is that the sporting success didn't seem to be paramount or in line with the commercial aspect. And to me, we're a football club at the end of the day, and we need to have commercial success, sporting success over anything else. And that's paramount to me as a fan. You know, I walk around with this on. I mean, I generally have a Spurs shirt on most of the time. I work from home, so I'm very lucky. I can sit in my Spurs top all the time, and I want this to be seen as sporting success, not, oh, you got Beyonce concert coming up, or you know, that type of thing. And yeah, those things are fantastic, and I don't think we should at all take that away from what he's done at the club. 25 years is incredible, and well, it's not been plain sailing. You know, we can't deny the work that he's done for the club in terms of the stadium, the training ground, those commercial revenues that come in. But ultimately, it's not worked out on the sporting success, and that, as fans, is what we measure success, not by, you know, having a 50 Cent concert or an F1 track under our south stand. You know, to me, I couldn't give two shits if we have a go-kart track or not. However, look, 25 years is a hell of a long time. I'm 40, so I've seen a couple of chairmans now, and this has obviously been the longest one. You have to thank him for those side of things, but ultimately, I'm very happy that if reports are that, you know, Vivian and the other sort of members of the Lewis family have said, no, enough's enough now. We need sporting success, and you're not the man for it. Like, bravo to them for stepping up and doing that. And I'm excited, slightly apprehensive, nervous, all sort of. It's weird. I don't really. All the emotions currently, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we don't know what's next. We've obviously, again, reports are always constantly coming out. It looks as though there will be no replacement of Levy. It looks like there will just be a restructure within what we've already got. Connor, I think you put it out on, I don't know if it was in one of the groups or on X, saying that it was strange to have a Vinay's position and Levy's position both at the same club. Where do you sit with it all? Obviously, can tell by the X name, he was obviously wanted Levy out, but obviously it's not just a Levy issue here, is it? There's a bit more into it. So where does it all sit with you, just on the first glance?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Levy-nomics was obviously the name I picked on X, but actually it was a lot more about, and I've been pretty consistent on this, I think, when I, you know, in terms of my tweets and when I come on podcasts, that I think actually, you know, ENIC and the whole model was the bigger issue actually than just Daniel Levy as an individual. And in some ways, Levy himself was hampered by that same model, right? Because he's not the person that was holding the purse strings at any point. He's obviously very intrinsically linked with ENIC and owns part of the club, but he's not cash rich himself. So, you know, a lot of my criticisms have come from the fact that you know, ENIC have not put their hand in their own pocket comparably to other ownership models, basically. So the way that they run the football club is very different to basically every other top football club. And on top of that, they've also taken money out of the football club to spend on property and things. And that's almost the crux of my criticisms, to be honest. Levy is obviously not faultless, and he's made a lot of mistakes over the years. But anyone would, to some extent, if they've been in the job for 25 years. It's not an easy job being a football chairman, right? So, yeah, I'm still. There's a lot of reports coming out today which are along the lines of it's the Lewis family that have pushed him out, which to me is a big surprise, I have to say, just because I think when I reflect on the job that Levy has done for the Lewis family and for ENIC, he's done an outstanding job for them, in terms of been the sort of key contributor to taking a £90 million investment to £3.5 billion, right, over the time, or £4 billion, wherever you value the club. Obviously, us as football fans are not particularly interested in that, but for me, Nick's side of things, you'd think Levy's done a pretty outstanding job. And those two families are so interlinked, right? Levy's son is one of the CEOs of Tavistock Group. There is a lot of links there. So I have to say those reports surprise me a little bit, but who knows? I think there's going to be a lot of proof in the pudding, I think, with this stuff over the next 6 to 12 months as to, my hope was that, this was the sort of prequel to a full sour takeover, rather than ENIC staying involved. But obviously all of the reports are alluding to the fact that ENIC wants to stay involved and it's them that have got this new focus. And I'm not sure, based on the way that their dad operated for all of that time and what has been the modus operandi of ENIC for all of that time. But let's see. But it's a lot to digest.
Yeah, 100%. So much to digest, and as I said, for some fans, this is all that they've known. And just before I come to you, Jose, Sammy Mockball has come out and said that it's understood that the younger generation of the Lewis family, i.e. Vivian and Charlie, who are Joe's children, have been key in making the decision to remove Levy. So, but as you said, Connor, there's obviously been everything's been intertwined for such a long period of time. But you would expect that this was from the older sort of generation where it was intertwined. If the youngsters are kind of getting involved now, then maybe they haven't got them sort of feelings, or maybe they're just a little bit more ruthless. But yeah, I completely agree with virtually everything that you've said there. So it is a little bit, again, Sammy Mockball also come out and said Levy, although it was announced as a step down, BBC Sport understands the decision was effectively taken out of his hands. So it's similar to what you was just hinting at there. Where do you sit on all this, Jose? Where are your thoughts and your feelings around it?
So the latest comment is, according to well-placed sources, the company that effectively owns Spurs, the Tavistock Group, which is owned by the Lewis family, has agreed for Levy to leave his position with a belief that the change will help the ambitions of greater and sustained sporting success. Levy will depart with immediate effect and there will be no notice period, with the timing of his departure after the summer transfer window a deliberate move. BBC Sport has been told that there is a sense from the Lewis family that success on the pitch has not been consistent enough over the years of Levy's reign. Spurs have won 2 trophies during the 25 years at Spurs, the first being the League Cup in 2008. The Lewis family are aware of some supporter discontent, much of it directed at Levy, that has engulfed the club in recent years. Tavistock figurehead Joe Lewis, who's 88, is understood to have a peripheral role in the decision for Levy to leave his post. It's understood that the younger generation of the family, Vivian and Charlie, who are Joe's children, have been key in making the decision. Vivian has been particularly visible at Spurs in recent months, and Nick Bocha, the grandson-in-law of Joe Lewis, has also taken greater involvement. So that is the latest that's been publicised. For me, where I sit on this is I'm probably not your Brian Daigle or your Stell on this. I'm not like all in balls deep. Levy's got to go, blah blah blah. There's people that have been heavy duty doing this for years.
Yeah.
Over the time that Levy's been at Tottenham, I don't think he's lied, because everything he said that they were coming to do, they did, and he's not lied in them senses. But at the end of the day, there's no smoke without fire, and the one common denominator in the 24 years is Daniel Levy. We've heard from many people who have dealt with Daniel Levy to say that, you know, he wants to win an argument. He'd fight himself in a paper bag or in a phone booth and stuff like that. You know, he's that type of person. And yet no one can doubt his business acumen and what they do off the pitch. Business wise, no one can doubt that at all. But what you wanted to see is some of that business acumen used on the football side. And for me, I'm not sure it's been used on the football side. We hear stories of people that have had to deal with Levy, like I said, and they've come out later on in years and said that, you know, he haggled the last 5 pence of a transfer deal, and he wanted to make sure that he got the last say on any deal that was being made. And we've probably missed out on a load of players because of X, Y, and Z. Now, I wasn't there, I wasn't party to the discussions, but all these people coming out and saying this, there can't be smoke without fire, surely. And I felt that as a long-suffering Tottenham supporter, I will say in the last 25 years, because in the previous 25 years I supported Tottenham before Levy came along, because I've been supporting the club for 51 years now. And in the previous 27 years, I saw us win trophies. I saw us compete. I saw us build sides that maybe we didn't win the leagues, but we were up in third place. You know, we've had some really good sides at challenge. And yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones that's seen loads of trophies. There are people that see more than me, but you know, to me, I think that we have been stifled somewhat with the way that our club's been run. And the hope is, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. We're all hoping on this, but I would like to think that maybe if the changes are now happening, that maybe some of these people that they're referring to might want to come out and speak to the fans or make a statement. Tell us what your vision is, what you want to do going forward. You don't have to do this every year. You don't have to do it every 2 years, but you just got to come out and bloody say something. And, you know, Levy attending Cambridge once every 7 years, where he's not going to be judged and he's not going to be challenged on anything he's asked, you know, that's not what you want. You want someone to come out and say, look, we're taking over. We're going to run it this way. This is our vision going forward. And then that's what you're going to hold people to. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, but it remains to be seen. And that's where that's my opening gambit for you, Luke.
We've seen quite a lot of good sort of stuff come out of the club since the summer, and those sort of communications have been pretty good. I think if that continues, certainly I'd be happier. Kind of echo Jose's thoughts there. It'd be nice if, you know, someone from Enoch, maybe Vivian or whoever, comes out and says, you know, we're putting everything, we're putting Peter Carrington in charge, and you know, Vinay's in charge, and we're very excited for the future. Just a 2-3 paragraphs of that would be enough for me, because I know that the buck stops, and ultimately the buck's always stopped with Daniel Levy. So, you know, I echo a lot of what Jose said.
I think that's why Vinay was brought in, because one of the big things, aside from the business side, was the communication, and that was from people inside of football have all said that he listens to the fans, he engages with fans, and I think when you look at pure communication from Tottenham Hotspur, and this isn't recent, this is over a long period of time, very rarely in any situation, be it positive or negative, do I look at their communication and go, they've got that right. There's always there was even things when it was a positive note and it was then a dig at fans, almost like, well, we got it right and you were all wrong, and it was almost like, who is looking at it from a communication point of view and going, yeah, do you know what, that just roll that out, that makes sense. And it's almost like as soon as Vinay's come in, and maybe he's wrongly getting some credit for that, but I've seen people already crediting him for things like the away days in Europe last year. Although he wasn't officially with the club, there's no doubt he would have been having conversations. I think they gave away 3 flags and that sort of thing. And it does seem to have changed. But just quickly, a caveat while we're sitting here talking. How weird does that interview now look between Vinay and Levy, when it was very, very bromance? It was very, I like working with you, you like working with me. But actually, the rumours again that have come out today are that these conversations were essentially taking part in January. And on some reports, I've actually read where Levy was actually almost interviewed as well to see whether or not it was almost like he had to apply for his own job, and he obviously didn't go too well. So how do you feel that this whole interview now that we previously watched and kind of went, oh, that's a bit weird, it looks even weirder, no?
Yeah,
It was
look, you raised a
incredibly
really
well
good point.
produced.
Oh, go on, Gary. You go first.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. It was incredibly well produced. Is the thing I immediately thought of. I've produced a number of videos myself, and it was quite clear. And for me, it didn't seem. I just didn't believe it totally. I liked the presentation and the idea behind it, and to give us a caveat behind the scenes. And we did that with Joanne Lang yesterday, and I thought those are good. And walking around the training ground, I thought they were also good, and I like the idea behind those things. But well produced stuff, it's just scripted, and it just felt like that. And I think that's why we all felt it was a little bit cringy. But yeah, it's clear that the decision has been made fairly recently, and it was his time to leave. And fair play to them, because that's a hell of a decision to make.
They've made some big decisions. I mean, obviously, we've always thought that Levy was kind of the be all and end all, and he made all the decisions. Obviously, the interview that he had with Neville, you always have to read between the lines with these things, but he was essentially saying it didn't just sit with me, was the first thing. And now maybe is it two massive decisions that have been made? Because I know that there was a poor league form last year, but to go and sack the one manager that's brought you a trophy after being slaughtered that you haven't won trophies was a huge decision. And then to go and get rid of Levy again proves that there are people that are willing to make these really, really big decisions. Levy's made some big decisions in the past, but a lot of them have been really, really poorly. For instance, Mourinho just before a cup final. So it does seem that there's been some sort of change within the structure, within the system, and even the direction, the level of player that we're targeting. Everything seems to have changed. But was we expecting it to be this much of a change at the top? As I say, I think everyone's still in a bit of shock. Kind of, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you raise an interesting point about that interview, right? Because they picked to release that interview at that time. They didn't need to do. Obviously, it was shortly after Vinay being appointed, but Vinay could have come out and done a short one himself, couldn't he? They didn't have to do it together. Levy talks about winning the Premier League and Champions League. It's all a bit odd, right? Because if you actually work through the way these things typically work, in terms of if you're going to do a succession plan, say for someone that's run a business for 25 years, particularly a business the size of Tottenham, right? There's a lot of steps that when you look back now, you go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So Peter Charrington, first of all, coming onto the board in March, okay, that makes sense. They're trying to get the board a bit stronger. He's obviously got a huge amount of experience. He's very linked in with Joe Lewis. Funnily enough, I've actually met Peter Charrington a couple of times in my personal life. He's a super impressive guy. And, obviously ran City Private Bank, but he's got a big investment background as well, right? So he comes on the board first of all. Then you get Vinay coming in May, I think it was, from memory, May, June time. Which again implies to you, okay, as I was saying, as you raised the point earlier, that the point I made about, okay, that's a bit weird because now you've got a CEO and an executive chairman. That doesn't quite work because normally you'd have a CEO and a non-executive chairman because the CEO is the one running the shop. So I always thought something was going to happen there, but I expected that Levy might just get a role on the board. So he'd step back from being an executive chairman, but he would just become the non-executive chairman. Obviously, they've pushed him on. But that interview now, if what we're led to believe from all of these reports from Sammy Mockbell and others that, Vivian Lewis hated Daniel Levy and they wanted him out, and why on earth would they release that interview in the early summer with them two all paley, as you say, talking about how they're going to make decisions together and all of this type of stuff? This is what is a bit contradictory for me, and why I'm still, maybe it's my optimism and hope that is taking me there, but I've still got this hope that actually, this is the prerequisite before a sour takeover, actually. And that's why Levy is stepping away now rather than Enoch getting more involved. Because if it was so hostile as it's being described, and Levy didn't want to let go, but he's been pushed aside and all of that stuff, why would they release that video in early June? Just doesn't make sense to me. Because this wouldn't be a recent thing. It wouldn't have happened in a week, right? It would have been over many, many months, which is also supported by the fact that Charrington and Vinay came in months ago. So this is what makes me think: are these reports true? And obviously, we're all we're all speculating, but it just seems odd.
Could it
You,
not be that in the
humiliation
background?
of losing those players part of it. We didn't get Eze over the line, Morgan Gibbs White. There's consistent, protests, shouting to social media. All of that being played a part since then. Perhaps they've gone, look, we bring someone in to help Levy, and then all these things that come in, and it might be just right. This is the final straw. We can't keep being embarrassed, and that's just throwing sort of maybe a thought out there. Something's definitely changed. Some relationship has fallen quickly.
yeah.
The rumors,
Yeah,
the rumors about about Vivian, especially Vivian Lewis, them rumors have been going on and on and on. I heard them at the start of the year as well, that she was not happy with Daniel Levy, that she wanted Tottenham. She supports Tottenham. She wanted success football wise, and not just, can Beyonce play left back? Can Guns N' Roses play up front? She didn't want all that. She wanted the success for the football team. And we heard, sorry, snippets were coming out at the beginning of the year saying that she was at odds with Daniel Levy. Now, the major shareholder is her dad. He's passed down the shares to them two. So them two hold more shares, 2-to-1 shares that what Levy holds. Now, at the end of the day, if they're holding 70% and he's only holding 30, and the brother and sister want him gone, then there's only going to be one winner when you got a 70-30. And at the end of the day, I suppose that Levy's got to look at who made Levy rich. Joe Lewis. So at the end of the day, you got to take what comes your way. Now, some of the stories that are coming out tonight on BBC and stuff like that, saying that they do want success on the pitch, and it is led by the two children. I think it's more led by Vivian, by everything we've been led to believe since January. So I think that these conversations already started at the beginning of the year, and that the plan was already hatched. And I think Levy knew about all this, but you got to get the blocks in place before we actually step aside type thing. So I think he's already known for a while. When they got rid of Donna Cullen as well, that came out of the blue. No, this has all been prepared and planned. Basically, is what I'm saying.
Apparently, the Donna Cullen, and this supports exactly what you're saying. Apparently, Donna Cullen wanted to retire last year, and Levy said, "Can you just do another one more year?" And could that be because he realised that actually everyone around him was kind of going, "We're not sure on you anymore." And if she was his closest ally, and because obviously it came out that when Donna Cullen handed in a resignation, there was a lot of rumours about it was supposed to be the year before. So if Levy's sitting there and seeing actually I'm losing a bit of grip here, I'm losing a bit of control, he keeps his right hand woman just for one extra year to kind of keep it. But then she's going, he knows she's going. And is it almost just a case of, so I agree. I think this has probably gone on a year, and then it's almost vindicated the board's decision where we've lost out on these players, and they've gone, now we've almost, they've had confirmation before they've even made the announcement. Yes, this is the right thing to do.
But even without losing the players, I think the ball was already set in motion, and I think it's set in motion. This is like Connor said. This is not something you do overnight. It says it ain't something you do overnight. This is planned. Right, and bringing the people in the blocks, the Vinais, bringing in Charrington, getting rid of Donna, bringing in the making one being made bit by bit strategically till the point that we've got to today. And at the end of the day, I found that the Vinay and Levy 8-minute commercial, I found it cringeworthy. I really did, but I can see why it was done back then, because even back then we were saying something's happening. A lot of people were saying something's happening, something's changing here, something's happening. Now, a lot of people, astute people, said something's happening, but it won't happen until the transfer window closes. Why would you show your hand during the transfer window, before the transfer window? Well, they've waited for the transfer window to close, and he's been moved on now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To me, it makes sense. That's what I'm saying. The timelines.
Yeah, John Stokes, massive thank you, mate, for the super chat. And I was just about to read this as well. So it's been reported on Sky Sports News by Lyle Thomas. The Lewis family remain committed to the long-term future of Tottenham Hotspur, and they're not interested in looking to sell their majority share. So they are it sounds like, again, what we've been hearing for God knows how long. It does sound like they're open to some sort of an investment. However, they want to remain as the controlling stake in there. And again, that fits with everything that we're hearing, and also obviously what we've heard previously as well. John, really appreciate that, mate. Thank you very much. Been a huge supporter of the channel ever since we started up. So yeah, that report's actually come from Michael Bridge, and Lyle Thomas has also tweeted it. So it does seem as if they want to stay around, but we're really going to see whether or not this was, and Connor, you've touched on it, is the way that Levy's run it, is that because of what he's been told to do and the restrictions that have been placed upon him? Because you're right, so many fans blame Levy for everything, but actually Levy doesn't have any money. It's all around what he's been provided. So has he been provided expectations and targets that are all off the pitch, and he's delivered on them? And we'll now see whether or not they are the targets, or whether it was all around on the field and he just wasn't delivering, and they just didn't feel they had a capable person to come in and step it up. Do you think that it's a big, I mean, I thought that this was a sliding doors summer for Spurs, but do you almost have to give them a bit of leeway, because it's going to be a brand new person coming in, similar to Ange and to Frank, in terms of this person now. Vinay is going to have full control by the sounds of things. It's going to be all down to him. He might want to come in and change a load more things, and we are then going to be waiting around again for a few years until he gets his kind of ideas through the table. What are your thoughts on the change there, Gary?
I'm not too sure he's going to come in and change a huge amount, if I'm honest. I think it'll probably go from the top, from the Lewis family. I think that sporting success seems to, hopefully, from what these reports are saying, is what's going to be paramount to the club. I've said this for ages. If we allow the commercial side to just tick over and keep doing as they're doing, fantastic. But the sporting success needs to be the priority, and hopefully that is the case, and that Vinay is given the resources to provide that. We clearly have seen there's money to spend based on the transfer window that's just happened. Hopefully this is the start of something good. I don't know a huge amount about Vinay, to be honest. He was at Arsenal, so I'll be completely honest, I don't even think I've ever been on any of the Arsenal channels in terms of social media or anything. So I know, even if they had signed Ronaldo yesterday, I would have no clue unless something told me. I'm not one of those that go onto other, unless it's the Spurs one. So I don't know huge about him, but I just hope that the sporting success is taken as paramount and a priority, and hopefully it is. And sounding like that is the case with what Vivian wants to do.
Yeah, and obviously going on to that, Connor, about the money that's there. I know you've done some deep diving into the money that's been spent in the transfer window by not only us, but then in comparison to other clubs. A lot of people feel like the transfer window was a success in terms of the players brought in, but as an overview of the whole window, not as successful as potentially it could have been, because there was, what we believe, money to be there that wasn't spent. So, for instance, we still had the 70 million apparently that we had assigned for Savinho that obviously wasn't spent. Is this a situation where now actually the club are saying he's the one target we want, and we're not going to go to number 4, 5, and 6, which has happened so often in the past? And obviously we're now in a predicament where so many of them options that are 4, 5, and 6 are probably not good enough.
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult one. And look, I reflected similarly to you on the window. I think that there's a clear uptick in the type of player we were targeting this window, right? And certainly those 4 we got through the door in Paulinho, Simmons, Kudus, and Muani are a massive improvement in terms of quality compared to what we've been used to seeing. So, I gave a lot of credit for that. I think I rated the window 7.5 out of 10 because I thought, I gave good weighting for those signings, but I think there was still quite a bit more that we needed to do. And it felt like there wasn't that much more we needed to do to have a really strong, like a 9 or 10 out of 10 window, get that left winger in, get another sort of centre-back, full-back hybrid in, and everyone would have been buzzing, I think. But on that point about waiting for Savinho, that's the Liverpool model, isn't it? You know, Liverpool are famous for doing that, where they wait for the right signing and the right player. I don't think we're yet in the situation where we can be like a Liverpool, because I think we've got such a glaring hole in the starting 11 on that left wing, that for me, I would rather have seen someone come in. But I do think it's been exacerbated by the fact that we signed Tell. I think if we hadn't signed Tell, let's just say, for argument's sake, you signed Lookman instead of Tell, right? Because it was a very similar price point. I think fans are feeling a lot better. They don't mind waiting for a Savinio or someone. I think the problem is now um, you've got to sort of hope it happens in January, and there's a big potential opportunity cost associated with not having that left winger in. So we'll see. But yeah, overall, I think it was definitely a step in the right direction. The window, for sure. And but we've got to do that consistently, because they delivered Ange a decent first window, and then delivered Ange a few shockers after that. Right, January was poor straight after. The summer was terrible, and then the following January they were messing around for too long. So we've got to do it consistently. We've got to build on it. But yeah, it was a strong window for me.
Yeah, and massive thank you to the Spurs 5 who have put through a raid. The chat's gone absolutely crazy. Thank you all for coming on. While you're here, please make sure you're liking, subscribing, and also hitting the notification bell. I've also got everyone on the panel. Their links are going to be in the description, and they're also in the chat as well. So make sure you're liking and subscribing to their channels and their X accounts as well. Yeah, I think with the window, I think, and that's what a lot of people, I've seen some people kind of not rate it very high. And then there's been loads of people that have gone back to them and kind of been like, I don't understand. We got 4 players in, etc., etc. And I get that. But I think a lot of people do forget that the 3 transfer windows before, we brought in 1 first team player. So we were so far behind what others had done that we didn't need to match what they done. We needed to better what they done. And obviously the top 4, the way that they spend and what they've been doing is absolutely crazy. But I think people very easily forget. It's almost like you just treat every window as its own window, but you need to look back and go, actually, what happened here? What happened here? We've been bringing in, and I've been saying this, our whole kind of ethos around bringing in these youngsters. You need experience pods to be able to, for them to learn from and be able to develop from. And we've almost gone around, and our transfer policy has been back to front. What we should have been doing is going and get the experienced pros and then bringing in the youngsters to learn from. Instead, we're bringing in youngsters who are learning from no one, or they're learning from players that you probably don't want them learning from. So I think that you're right, Con. I think we really need to get into a situation where these level of windows are being delivered on a consistent basis all of the time. And my worry with Savinio, and I think this is part of being Spurs, is that you go, are we going to wait till January, not get him in January, and then all of a sudden we've just wasted time here. We've just completely wasted time. Jose, what is your thought? Big up, Chris. I brought you in there, mate. I hope you're doing well.
I want to ask Connor a question, right?
Yeah, go on.
Connor, the window's just closed. It's still today, right? The window's closed today, Connor, right? And you're saying 7.5. With the news from today, does your 7.5 go up, Connor?
It's a 12.
It doesn't. And
It's still a 7.5, is it? Okay.
It's still 7.5, and to be honest, I suspect that I suspect that Levy was involved to the very end, right? But yeah, look, I think it's going to be really interesting. I think the next 6 to 12 months for us to really see how this plays out, isn't it? And see what happens in January and the following summer as well, for sure.
Yeah. So, Jose, what are your thoughts on the window and where we kind of sit with it? Do you think that this is a benchmark for us to push on? Is this what Connor said? Is this the good window that we've got, and we're now going to be followed up with other windows that are not going to exceed? Do you expect it to just get better and better from here? What do you think?
Yeah, to me, from what we've discussed already, that my thoughts were that the plans and the behind the scenes stuff with Levy leaving today, I believe started at the beginning of the year. So I think that there was stuff that was put in place, and obviously we saw the way that we acted in the window, which was out of character when you sign you sign, or you're saying you're going to sign Mohamed Kudus on the Thursday, on a Wednesday, and then on the Thursday you get the news that Morgan Gibbs White is having a medical the following day on the Friday at Tottenham, and you're just like, hold on, we're moving mad here. 2 players, 2 days. You know, what's going on? This is unlike Tottenham. When you go and look at, I mean, it's not rocket science, is it? But when you look at the teams around you dropping bombs of 200 every bloody transfer window, you know that you need to follow suit if you want to keep up or progress with the teams around you. Now, if we look at the transfer window now as a whole, we've got Xavi Simons in. We paid the money for. We've paid money for Mohamed Kudus. Yeah, we paid a little bit of money for Takai, Danso, and Matthias Tell, and we bought 2 guys, 2 in on loan. In our squad, our team gets improved by 4 players straight away. 4 first teamers out of them straight away would improve our team, and you just think to yourself, something must have changed because of the way that we acted this summer. Now, as I said earlier and alluded to earlier, what I'd like to see is if Vivian Lewis is definitely pushing this, right, and she definitely wants success on the pitch, that is music to our ears as supporters. That's what we want. The success is not in what's the tallest hotel you can build, you know, which is the best landscape garden. We don't want none of that shit. We just want football. We want success on the pitch, and I'm hoping that.
Oh,
Was he cut out?
has he cut out? I'm gonna say that he's hoping that now we start seeing the changes on the pitch, but surely we're in a situation now where all of the off the pitch stuff. I mean, I know you can always progress that, but surely that's in such a good state that it's again a benchmark for us to be able to push on. Chris, thanks for coming on, mate. Much appreciated.
Apologies for the lateness.
That's all right, mate. No problem. Levy, what are your thoughts on him? We've already touched on it, but here's your say. What are you feeling around him?
I couldn't believe it. I had to scroll through Twitter a few times just to make sure it was actually not. I wasn't just reading a banter account. It was actually the right thing. And then when I started seeing everyone tweeting it, I thought, wow. There's obviously something. There's obviously a change going on within the structure above, which I think we spoke about at the end of last season. There was definitely a review that was needed because you can't go and win the Europa League and finish 17th in the league and play terrible football. There's a whole lot I think has gone wrong at Spurs. Not saying it's all Levy's fault, but I think with the transfer windows that we've had, and it's all where every window we've had, apart from this window's been pretty all right. But I think previously over the last few years, we've always nearly got a top player and then settled for someone who's obviously not the top target. And hopefully, going forward now, I don't expect us to start going out and spending 300-400 million a transfer window in the summer and then spend another 100-200 in January. It's never going to happen for Spurs, I don't think. But I'm hoping now that we do go for the 2, 3, 4 players that's going to come in and actually be a squad player. And then there's someone in the background, if it's the head of youth or whoever it may be, that then starts saying, right, we want to have a little budget here to start picking up some youngsters that we feel could come in and integrate in time into the team. And there's separate signings from the main signings that we go and get. And that way, I think, as most people have said on there, we just keep building the squad now and we keep up with everyone around us. It'll be interesting to see over the next sort of 6 months to a year how it all starts to settle. Obviously, once now Levy's, I think it's an immediate exit, if that's right, if I've read it right.
Yeah. So
it'd be interesting to see how it all folds out and what actually happens.
Yeah, it seems to be an immediate, but as I say, there's literally updates coming through all of the time. Now, obviously, with Levy, from what we could gather in the interviews that he was kind of talking about, he was the guy that was coming in at the last sort of end of transfers to kind of push him over the line. But soon as this was sort of announced, and we kind of discussed it a little bit in some groups yesterday in regards to the Tell situation. So who was the person that was going and making these sorts of signings then? is this the club signing that we've heard Conte say? Has that gone on much more than we're kind of aware of? Because the indications will be from Tell dropping out of the Champions League squad is that he was never fancied by Frank anyway, or is he just not lived up to what Frank thought he was going to be? So it's interesting to know who's making these sorts of decisions, because if Levy and some of us are in agreement here that it's probably not just a quick fire thing, this has probably been in the pipe work for a while. But if that's the case, then who was the one that was turning around and making these signings that Frank maybe hasn't authorised, or as I say, he has done? It's just Tell hasn't lived up to the expectations. Where do you sit around the whole ownership, kind of purchasing players, managers maybe not being involved, Gary? Where do you think this whole situation, because in the few groups there's loads of different conversations about, as I say, not just about Frank but also about Tell, about whether the club make these signings. Where do you sit with all of it?
A little from column A, a little from column B. I think that the alignment for how many years now, let's just say for a number, 5 or 6, probably even more, it's just been like this from the top. I don't think the person at the top knows what the person at the bottom, which is the manager, let's be frank about it, no pun intended, really knows what we want. Antonio Conte is a win now manager. Go and look what he's doing in Napoli. He is buying players that will win the Scudetto this year. That's it. He's not buying a player that might win it in 4 or 5 years' time. He wants to win now. So we go out and buy young players when he's a Tottenham manager. Jose Mourinho has won everything. Can't stand the bloke personally, but he's gone out and won everything, right? We're buying players that for development purposes. We don't want that. They're not going to be here to develop them. Pochettino, I think, was different. He was willing to do that. I think he was a little bit more of a yes man than the other two. But the alignment from the top all the way down to the bottom, even down into our academy, has been zigzagging for as long as I can remember. And I think that it's the point now that they've got to us. Well, this is just what we normally do. We normally go and buy these type of young players with hope that potential that we can make a player out of them and maybe sell them on. It doesn't work. We have an inability to sell players as well. Since 2016, I've got the numbers here. We've spent 1.2 billion on incomings and we've sold 474.9 million. That's a net spend of 752. Our inability to sell players is ridiculous. Looking at, say, Manchester City have sold nearly £1 billion worth of football players. Our alignment from what our manager, our technical staff, coaching want is different to what the recruitment seems to be providing. And so I think that it's just become a norm that this is what we do. And hopefully that changes, because I think it was Jose that said a minute ago that all of a sudden we've gone out and we're trying to buy Morgan Gibbs-White and Mohamed Kudus, and that just didn't feel like Tottenham. They were too old to me. And they're not, but that's how it felt from how our recruitment is. And so hopefully, touch wood, this is the start of something new. And I echo Chris there. I don't think we're going to be going out every season splashing 300 million. And I'm happy we don't, but we need to buy the correct players to improve what we've got. And that's the problem we've got. We're constantly looking for potential. I am the biggest Football Manager fan you could probably find. That's all I do on Football Manager. This ain't real life, guys. I can fucking edit it real time if I want. If my 50 million signing don't work, I'll just edit him a little bit and make him better. You know, it's just, this is what we seem to do. So a little from column A, a little from column B.
Yeah. No, I completely understand and agree. But one thing it made me think of as well, and it was only after the fact that I thought about it in terms of the whole youth project and everything else, was Ange Postecoglou was not a youth project manager. He was not a Pochettino type. He was not a Frank type. He was more of a win now manager, not to the levels of obviously Jose and Conte, but he was very much like a 2 or 3 year kind of get in, get out sort of thing. That was how he's done. That's how he's operated. So the fact that he went and purchased a load of these young players actually doesn't really fit in with his manager profile. So actually, again, was it more that all of this is just very much led from the top? This is what we want to do, and you have to just go along with it. Because, as I say, like I've been saying this, Frank is slightly different, because I think because of what job Frank has done. He looks longer term. But most managers are only here for 2-3 years. So they're not going to, and I said this in some chats earlier, they're not going to care about the players that might deliver in 3 or 4 years because it's not going to be under their stewardship. They're not going to be here. So I used Williams Barnett as the key example. He's 16. He's not going to impact this first 11 for 4 or 5 years. If Frank's only here for 3, he doesn't care how he develops because it's going to have nothing to do with him. So there has to be, and it's exactly what you're saying as well, Gary, is that there has to be an alignment from the very top in terms of how they look for you have someone who does a 2 and 3 year plan, but you have to have a 4, 5, 6, 7 year plan. And obviously, again, we'll go back to the Champions League squads. We have one club trained player in it who most people would say is probably not good enough, but solely because he's the 3rd choice goalkeeper, it doesn't really make a difference. But we don't have any other players that have come through the academy that are good enough to get to the first team. And is this because, again, all the managers have been looking at it as a 1 or 2 year plan, get out? Connor, I know that you've had a little look about squad registration for other clubs as well. It's not just a problem at Spurs. But do you think it is a problem at Spurs that they need to rectify, even if it is a problem elsewhere as well?
Yeah, I think you raised loads of good points there. I think, for years there hasn't been alignment. I don't think Tottenham have had a bit of an identity crisis about what they are. I think that's the problem. I think, part of us wanted to be like this sort of Brentford, Brighton type club that was, signing young talents, which will then develop and sell on for more. And then that was slightly at odds though, because actually we're much bigger than them. So that doesn't quite work. So there was this massive identity crisis about what we were and what we wanted to be, I think. But, and I think for years, I mean, the academy is, other than Harry Kane, and Winks was okay. We sold him on for a biscuit, but I think it implies to me there's probably been chronic underinvestment in the academy for a number of years as well. And as you say, that clear sort of pathway, and that's why we've got the issues we've got now. I think with Tell was definitely a club signing. I think everything tells you that, when no pun intended, when you look at Ange talking about him definitely staying. I think the fact that when he did sign, he said he hadn't even met Frank. There's a lot of things that imply he was a club signing. I think that one was a loan with an option to buy as it was structured, but I think there was always a gentleman's agreement in place that we were going to sign Tell. So yeah, and so to me that seems a club signing. I mean, on the UEFA rules point and the club registration, I mean, there isn't a single English club in the Champions League that have registered 25 players on the A list. So it isn't just a Tottenham problem, as you say. I think some of it comes from the fact that, the financial regulations mean that if you sell players that you've produced yourself, you get to recognise the full profit for PSR purposes and things on one hand, but then the UEFA registration rules are trying to encourage you to register, players that have come through the academy. Those two things are slightly at odds and contradict each other a bit. Newcastle, for example, don't have a single club trained player, right? So because Lewis Hall and Miley are on the B list rather than the A list. But they would have had Anderson, right? But they sold Anderson to Nottingham Forest because they were having PSR issues, So there's examples of that throughout. But yeah, I mean, let's hope we get to a place where there's a bit more organisation. I mean, if we do qualify for Europe again next season, it does get easier for us anyway because Bergvall and Gray go to the B list, and so you suddenly.
I think Tell does as well. I think,
and Tell will, yeah. So, or Tell might be 6 months.
He's got to be
later
2 years, right?
Yeah, 2 years. So he would have only been 8
6 more months.
But nevertheless, you're right. He'll get there at some point. So it gets a lot easier from then. But yeah, I think we just want to see an aligned strategy, don't we? That's what we want.
This is a problem Premier League wide. This is if you get a chance after this, Michael Owen and Rio Ferdinand are covering this quite well. You look at England's youth team, under 17s, 18s, 19s, just won back-to-back under 21 tournaments. We're beating the best we're beating the best countries in Europe. Those players in, you know, your France, Spain, Germany's or whatever, they're still playing for their teams. They're playing for their main teams. They're going and doing 30, 40, 50 games a season. When our players come back, they're not. And there's a big difference is then we go out and spend 50, 60 million on these 22-year-olds from France, where we could have had let's just use Luca Williams-Bennett, for instance. Let's say he's just won back-to-back under 21 tournaments. He's an attacking midfielder. He's just won all of that, still raw, but we're going to spend 40 million on Javi Simmons, where we've kind of got someone in our own ranks that we can progress through with 30, 40 games itself. But this is a Premier League issue. You look at any league in Europe, and you know, I watch La Liga and Serie A all the time. They're producing their own talent, and we're too focused on having the best league in the world and not the best national side, which also helps our teams long term. But there's just this weird thinking, and it's a league issue rather than a Tottenham issue.
But it's a way of abusing the system, isn't it? Because all of these rules that we're talking about, the homegrown rules, the FFP, all of it was all put in for young players to flourish. And actually, they're now being used as pawns because you look at like Chelsea, for instance. Conor Gallagher's your captain. Your manager wants him. He's a star man. He starts week in, week out. But they look at him and go, yeah, but he's so valuable as that because of FFP. And it's almost like that's not. It was obviously brought in to kind of increase the Premier League, the English players, the youth players, everything like that's all been pushed to kind of increase that. Whereas actually you can always, every positive, you can find a negative in it or find a sly way around it. And that seems to be what it's like. Yeah, some of the players that are being sold nowadays, because they're a club trade. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, Connor. We got £20 million for Oliver Skipp, like an insane amount of money. And if he wasn't English or he wasn't association trained, how much would he have sold for? And it's almost like the rules have kind of worked in the wrong way. They were supposed to work in a particular way, and they've completely worked in a different way. But I think the youngsters, definitely, we need to be better at being able to manage them. But again, I think it all links into what we're saying in terms of a longer term plan. I'm hoping that we're now turning the corner. And Jose, I know that's what you was kind of going into and saying that hopefully now we've deviated away from property and everything else, and now all of the focus is going to be shifted onto this football team. But we still need to be planning. There still needs to be, and we've done it with the hotels. We've done it with the Grand. The Grand was a fault way back when they first bought the club. We now need to do that with this squad. We need to look at it, and I've been saying this for ages. Heung-min Son, we still haven't replaced him. There was talk about us replacing him this window, but we've had him for 10 years and we hadn't sought out a replacement. Harry Kane still hasn't been replaced. All of these players that we can name off where there's been no planning, there's been no, whereas you can guarantee if that was a hotel or something else, we'd have had the planning. It would have all been done perfectly. So hopefully now we're deviating away from that, and it's all about on the field where we need them to deliver.
It was a tall hotel. It was a tall hotel or a landscape garden. We would have delivered on time and on budget. Right. What I was going to say, I heard what you guys have been saying about Tell. Right. Tell is not here and now. The problem that you've got here and now, and people are picking on Matthias Tell at the moment, that problem started possibly 13 to 15 years ago. And that's because of poor planning and poor recruitment. I mean, I don't know whether you guys can search back. Do you remember we beat City to qualify for the Champions League? We beat them 1-0 away. Crouchy scored. Okay, right. From that season that we were in the Champions League, it's the first time I've ever heard, you don't have enough association trained footballers, or you don't have enough homegrown players, or you don't have enough foreign players in your squad. Your squad's going to be tiny unless you bring in blah, blah, blah to make the numbers right so you can have a squad of 25. The first time I ever heard it was when we was in the Champions League that year. Every season that we've qualified for Europe since then, all I've ever heard Tottenham is say the same things over and over again. We haven't got the right number of homegrown. We ain't got the right number of academy trained. We ain't got the right number of foreign players. We can't field a squad of 25. We got problems unless we buy and do it this way, then we're not going to have a squad of 25. So that's piss poor planning and piss poor recruitment. And this started for me way back when we played in the Champions League for the first time. And we're the only club. It's embarrassing. It's the only club. And unlike Gary, I do watch some of the other teams, right? And I do watch some of their channels. A lot of the time I go in there, don't say much, or if I want to take the piss, I go and put a one-liner in there. But I never heard of any of our other opposing fans or teams that are playing in Europe say we haven't got enough homegrown, we haven't got enough academy trained, we haven't got enough to foreign, we can't stick a squad of 25 in. The only team I've ever heard that with is Tottenham. Every time we're in Europe. Last season they were talking about it again. When we got rid of Winks one year, we got Kane, we got rid of Kane, we got rid of bloody Skip. No, but it's only Tottenham. Every season that we're in Europe, I only ever hear Tottenham talk about it.
Do you think it's maybe we speak about it though, because that's almost peddled as an excuse by the club as to why we can't sign players? Because that's where I've seen it sometimes framed. They go, "Oh, we can't sign this player because we've got to let this one go because we've got registration." Because I looked at Liverpool's Champions League squad for this year, right? They've registered 22 players, same as us. One of those 22 is Rio Ngumaha, who was the 16-year-old kid who came on the other day, but they couldn't put him on the B list because they've only just signed him. And then they got 2 players on it, so they've got the exact. They've had to leave Chiesa out of their squad, so they've got the exact same issue that we've got.
Now,
But I take that.
But we've had it.
I'm sure others have.
every time.
I just think
Sorry, Connor. When you enter any of the European competitions, the minute the 1st or 2nd of September comes around, depending when the competition starts, but it's always usually in September, you can go on the UEFA website and you can see all the squads like you can now for this season's, right?
Yeah.
And going back, because I used to look at all that shit back in the day. I used to look at all the squads, and back in the day, it's always Tottenham that seemed to have had this problem. It's always Tottenham. Every other team seemed to be able to put 25. And I'm not talking just, right, I'm talking Premiership for now. But I look throughout Europe as well, and they don't seem to have the issue. They've got the 20. For me, it leads to that poor planning and poor recruitment that has put us here, and also as well with the merry-go-round of managers we've had and the merry-go-round of people that we've had, directors of football, not aligning with each other because they're in 1 minute, they're gone the next. At the end of the day, there's no pathway, there's no clear way, there's no clear vision, and that's why we've ended up. So it's not where we are today. For me, it's been a steady, I'd say 13 to 15 years has got us to where we are today. And what we need to do, for me, as a supporter, I would like my team to put plans in place, have a vision, and align to that vision. And it doesn't matter whether we've got Thomas Frank, and let's for argument's sake, it's Paratici. You've got Thomas Frank and Paratici. If they just fulfill their contracts, and what did Thomas sign? A 3-year contract? 2 years? 3 year?
3.
2 with an option. Two with an option of 1, right? So let's say for argument's sake that Thomas Frank and Paratici are both on 3-year contracts, and that they see their 3-year through, right? If someone then came in after 3 years, because you've got that vision and you stuck your plan in place already, then even if they left and the next people came on board, then you would follow that plan, and we won't find ourselves in this sticky mud that we found ourselves for years. That's my hope. And I'm hoping with what they're saying now, all the noise is coming. We want to do it on the pitch. We want to do it for the football side. And as supporters, that's exactly what I want to see.
That's what happens in a very Italian-based model, where in Italy you've got the director of football that essentially leads on everything, and that director of football will pick an idea and a philosophy that the club will play for, whether it be a formation or a way of playing or attacking football, whatever. And then all the players and all of the managers are picked for a way that best suits that. So you might not go and get the best manager that's available because your system is set up and your players have been purchased to play 3 at the back and he plays 4 at the back or whatever. And that's what I've kept saying about Spurs, is that we need someone that's not looking after just the immediate, because every manager now, it's different if you sign a 7-year contract and you've got 3-4 years to kind of get things right. You might invest in the youth, you might look at them, you might bring in like younger players, and Arsenal are used as a massive example of this. But people, again, they had so many injuries that they resorted to bringing these kids in and then they stepped up. It wasn't that they went, oh, we're going to step them up, we're going to bring them in. It was that, hang on a minute, Saka got injured. We've got no choice but to bring someone in. We've got no left back. We'll bring in. So sometimes, and the same thing happened with Rashford. I remember there was they had their striker got injured in the warm up, and all of a sudden he came off the bench instead. He wouldn't have even been in the squad. So a lot of it is down to luck. But for me, it's almost like there needs to be some sort of plan that takes place at the very, very top of the club, and it all feeds down. And hopefully this is part of that process now. There has just been some more news that's broke that Matt Laws said, Vinay sent an email to staff that acknowledged that it was a significant news to process. It would come as a shock. However, he just said it was business as usual. We look ahead. And then, funnily enough, someone mentioned it earlier about Football Manager, out of context Football Manager, which is a brilliant X account, has put up a little thing about Daniel Levy stepping down, closes the book on football's biggest Moneyball stories. When he took over, Spurs were valued at around £80 million. Today, they're worth 3.3 billion, with revenues topping 550 million a year, all while keeping the wages at just 42%. That's not quite fair because there has been other occasions where it's been higher, but they're talking of now. In Football Manager terms, he's built Spurs into a Champions League regular and gave them one of the best stadiums in the world, all without the sugar daddy budget, the ultimate long save. So big shout out to Out of Context Football Manager. They're always got some brilliant tweets coming out from there. But there has been some other contrasting reports. I don't know how reliable this is, but there are some other reports saying that the club are looking to sell. But I think we're probably going to have this now for a little while, where ENIC want to sell, but they don't want to sell, and it's going to kind of be all these different reports that kind of come out. Chris, where do you sit on this whole philosophy at the club? Is this going to be a continuation of what we've seen, or are we going to completely change and deviate and go a completely different way? What do you think, mate?
Do you know, it's funny, I was listening to that Peter Crouch podcast yesterday on the way home from work, and it was Henry Lansbury was on there talking about his career and whatever he'd done. And obviously he come through the youth team at Arsenal, and they asked him about his loan moves that he'd done, and he said, I just wanted to go and play first team football anywhere. It didn't matter where. He said, because the under 21s, he said, it's not worth it. And I know that we've spoken about it before. If there was ever going to be a time when youth players were going to get played, it was last season with all the injuries that we had. I mean, playing Archie Gray at right back, centre mid, like if you've got a youngster, and I said about it last season, when Austin come in and played, he had to step in and play. And I'm sure he got man of the match, played out of his skin, done nothing wrong at all, and played really well. 2 days later, we go and sign Kinski, and he plays the next day after getting registered. And I was like, if I was any youngster in Tottenham now, I'd be saying, I'm out the door. That's because how can you have someone that steps up, plays really well, collects man of the match in his first ever game for Spurs, and then gets dropped 4 days later when you've just come in and done that? And not every young player is going to come in and play really, really well and, I mean, set the world on fire, and then that's going to be them. You get the odd players that do come in. But last season for me, if you're going to use your youngsters, and you must know as a manager of the first team, there must be someone in your ear saying, look, this boy, he's playing really, really well in the under 21s. Like, it could be stepping up for here. Let's get him in training with the first team and get him about it all, and just see if Harry takes to that. Maybe give him 10, 15, 20 minutes of a couple of games and just see how he handles it. Obviously, it's taking a risk on the player. But as I say, last season, with all the injuries that we had, I mean, we had Reguilon sitting on the bench for left back, and we were playing everyone out. People were just playing, and I was like, you've got a left-footed left back on the bench. Whether you think he's good or he's not, it's better than playing someone out of position who, again, you might end up needing for the rest of the season because of how the injuries were going. I think Archie Gray was the only player that didn't really get injured, and he played the majority of the games. But we should have been using these under 21s, because there would have been 1, 2, 3 players in the under 21s that deserved the chance. They might not have been at the level, and they're going to, as I say, they're going to set the world on fire. But they've got to be ready. We've got to have some under 21s that are ready to step up into the first team and actually give it a go. And it's a case of, you've proved yourself. Here's your chance. Go and take it. Show us what you can do now. Show us why you should be in and amongst it all. And that again must come down to planning, because every season, I mean, the under 21s, they won the under 21s league. And I know, again, it's not like they've won something major, but that just shows how good our under 21s are. So
yeah, but the thing is with under 21s that the year before there was a restructure in the league, and actually the year before we'd have got relegated if the restructure didn't happen. So we essentially finished bottom,
right,
and then they reorganized it, and we ended up winning the league. That is how under 21 football works. Like, you can go from being absolutely incredible to being shocking the next year just because 3 players move on. So, but going on from
yeah, we can, but with Chris is saying there he's absolutely right. That the opportunity for a pathway is blocked. I know for a fact that Ange Postecoglou never watched one under 21 game last season. I know that because I know a couple of people. He was never been seen at the training ground for an under 21 game. That shows to me he's got no interest in those players, because he knows he's probably only going to be at the club for 18 months, 2 years. So to him, I don't really care. Sergio Reguilon, let's be fair about it, wasn't the greatest footballer in the world, but I'd have played him at left back and not kept putting some random person there. We were playing people out of position just for to be honest, arrogance. And he wouldn't look at some of these younger players. And look, when we did bring them on in the Europa League, 3 of them were absolutely fucking brilliant. And then we never saw them again.
Yeah.
You know,
the only counter argument to that is, I suppose, with all of these youngsters that we're loaning out at the moment. I mean, someone put it on Twitter the other day, literally 9 out of 10 of them were all sitting on the bench at teams that are not Tottenham Hotspur, Stoke and Aberdeen. And, so there is part of me which goes, are they as good as we think they are?
No, but I think that comes down to Chris's point as well, is that we're not providing a pathway for them, or we're not recruiting. All those players that we maybe want to go and get are going, well, why do I want to go to Tottenham? There's no pathway for me. At the minute, I'm looking at it now on loan. Luka Vuskovic should be in the first team right now. Yang,
apparently he's the one. He insisted on that move. Apparently,
and he's insisted on the move.
Wanted to
fantastic. Yang is out of Portsmouth. He's played once.
Yeah, he's the anomaly.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
more as well. I think more insisted it as well.
He's realised that actually I'm not going to get a pathway here. Let me go and play. Good on him. Manor Solomon. Okay, hardly kicked a ball for us. He's gone out. Alfie Devine could have done a job last season. Valise again could have probably have done a job for us. Ashley Phillips. I mean, why are we not bringing someone like Ashley Phillips back off loan when we were absolutely injury rifed in January? These are just. There is no. It's again what I said earlier. The structure of the team and of the club is like this, and we're just never. We won't progress until that is fully aligned.
And every year we're going to have the same issue where we sit here every year, if we do qualify for European football every year, and we're going to be having the same conversation about we haven't got these homegrown players, because it's going to be a problem. And it's whether it's down to them, their pathway being blocked, as you said, or they're just not good enough. But we should be at the stature that the club we have, we should be able to produce good youngsters. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to. And if we can't at the minute, then again, the whole system needs to be refigured out. And if we need to bring in new bodies,
and that's what Paratici brought in. Like and Mourinho said it. After Dane Scarlett, there was no one coming through that academy that was anywhere near
and they've not produced much with him either. Look at we all talk about Luca Williams Barnett. Right? I went and saw him play twice the other week. He's 16. He's playing in the under 21s. It was absolutely fantastic against a really physical. Against a really physical Crystal Palace team. He was very, very good technically. Both feet, you couldn't tell which foot he is. Great player. He's 16 years old playing under 21 football. I don't see him having a pathway through to our first team, and that's terrible to think about. We should be a club that is developing our own players, and if not, absolutely fine. Don't waste our money on it. It's pointless.
I was actually going to come on to that. So the under 21s, I think there has been a slight change, because the under 21s that won the league had a lot of 21 players. They was like 21 20s. So they were right at the experience of the top of that league. So we had Lancashire there. Santiago went to play, I think, second division in the Spanish league. There was a couple of others that were in and around it.
They've all
However,
gone.
they've all gone. They've all either out on
All the
loan.
21s,
Onley
all
was
the
there as well.
21s, yeah, all the 20-year-olds and 21s that we had back then have all left the club.
Yeah.
And a lot of them left on frees. We got pittances for them all. And they were the ones that won the under-21 league. Yeah, you're saying Lancashire. Lancashire towards the end of that season came into the 21s, but he was only 18, 19 at the time. So he's obviously still at the club now. But I will say the only anomaly, and I understand the argument for and against that people are putting forward, but the only anomaly for me is if your players are good enough, then age doesn't matter. And we're looking at someone like Vuskovic who's turned around and said, I've seen what the two boys in front of me can do. And for me, I've played with them. I can see what they can do. And for me, there's no point me coming and staying on the bench here. I've got to go and improve myself to close that gap. So he's going to make that decision. So he's the anomaly for me because he's come out, made that decision, gone on loan. The rest of the players that we've got, they've gone out on loan. None of them have gone to Premiership clubs. They've all gone to Champs, League One, League Two. And like someone just said a minute, I think it might have been you, Gary. If we look at last weekend's matches, I don't know one player that played I can't remember or recall one player that played 90 minutes.
Yeah, they didn't.
So,
they tweeted it.
Yeah. So at the end of
to be honest,
the day,
I think. Sorry, go on.
Go on, I finish, go on, mate.
No, I was just going to say, look, I mean, I come at it from a slightly different angle. I just generally think that some of these are just not good enough, and you just have to be ruthless. And your academy could be used for two things. In an ideal romantic world, you get a Harry Kane story, and they come through and they make a huge impact in the first team. But the other way it can be used is to get money, right? And City and Chelsea do it. They sell kids, and now and again you'll make mistakes, and they have, right? City have sold players like Morgan Rogers, Porro, there's loads, right? The City have Lavia, Palmer, Douglas Luiz was in there. There's loads, right? And Chelsea got rid of Rice went to West Ham when he was in their academy. So there's clubs make mistakes, but I think they also acknowledge that sometimes most of them are not going to make it. And I think for me, the fact that we can't have it all right, because we're arguing, we want to compete. So obviously we've got to sign players that allow us to compete because the rest of the league are doing that. Then we're signing the likes of Bergvall, Gray, Odebert, Tell, Vuskovic, that you also want to get minutes. And then we want our own academy kids to get minutes. It's like, we can't do it all. And I think the thing for me is the likes of Alfie Dorrington. Alfie Dorrington was in the squad. He was older than Archie Gray, and Ange still made the decision to put Archie Gray at centre back ahead of Dorrington, which tells me that Dorrington isn't very good. Because why would he? He just wouldn't do it. So then we just got to be ruthless, sell him, move on to the next one. I think is my point on it.
I agree. I don't.
Yeah, but the thing is, sorry, can I just say? Yeah, they're not, because the thing is, people have got to look at it, right. Chelsea started this vision off. Chelsea plummeted all their money into academy football, and they did it in at the turn of the year 2000. Around that time, they did it. Down where I am, and I live down on the south coast, there's a Chelsea football academy. There isn't even the Brighton's the nearest Premiership club to me, and Brighton haven't got an academy where I live. Chelsea have got it, right? So Chelsea started doing this model in the early 2000s. Manchester City started doing their model. They copied the Chelsea model, and Man City started it in about 2010, about 10 years after Chelsea. So you see that Chelsea have borne fruit for years and years and years with what their academy does and sells. And now you're seeing Man City do it. People say that the cycle takes about 10 years. So you're bringing kids in when they're 7 years old, you get them at the earliest stage. The cycle takes about 10 years normally. Paratici started something about 3 years ago. So we're on the path of trying to do what Chelsea and Man City do, but we're not going to get there because you at the moment aren't the players that are going to be the sexy names you're looking for. They're not these crop of players now. They're going to be crops of players in 7 years' time if we still follow that route. And you watch, yes, some of them make mistakes, but some of them make a hell of a lot of money. So like Connor said, there's two ways of looking at it. the fairy story that you get someone that goes from your academy into your first team, or you create to self-fund your club, so you can sell on and use that to move forward.
But it's also about.
We are a million miles away from Chelsea and Man City. You've got to let that 10-year cycle begin before you can even start looking at what you're going to produce. It's too early at the moment. We ain't got the players.
But
we are the
also,
prime example of Harry Kane. Right? We wanted to sell a player that we didn't think was good enough until one person believed to give him an opportunity to play, and he turned into the greatest player, one of the greatest players we've ever produced or ever had. If for me and my job, right, I'm a sports agent by trade. That's my job. Okay, I look after talent around the country and in Europe. I'm only as good as the person next to me. Right? I only learn from the person next to me. It's the same with football. You're only going to learn by playing with better people. Whatever you guys do in your jobs, you're only going to learn by being with someone else. My brother's a mechanic. He only gets better by being with better mechanics. By saying they're not good enough, they might not be good enough at that stage, but they have to have an opportunity to prove that and to learn from someone. If you're telling me that a centre-back, Alfie Dorrington, let's just use an example, is playing next to a World Cup winning centre-back for 5, 10, 15 games, if he's not going to improve, 100% he's not good enough. But I guarantee you'll be a better player after that, and he might turn into something. They're the things that our alignment isn't like this, isn't straight. We're not giving opportunities to players because of whatever those reasons might be within the club. But you have to give people opportunities to improve. Otherwise, we're just not going to produce players. Harry Kane is the best example of that. He was literally about to be sold, and then look what he did.
100%.
But is Kane not the exception rather than the rule?
There's always going to be going to be exceptions though, because he was given an opportunity. Tell me another player that's come through that
Ledley King.
Yeah,
Ledley King was a top quality player, right? And I've seen Ledley King play beside some absolutely abysmal and shocking centre halves back in the day that used to play with Ledley.
Yeah.
And they were playing with Ledley, so you think they'd learn from Ledley, but they never bloody did because they were crap.
The thing about Ledley is that Ledley was a star when he was 12. Like, my uncle used to play football with him. Like, Ledley King, every person around the area knew Ledley King. They knew he was going to be a star. They knew he was going to be a footballer. Like, he was unbelievable.
I'm talking about the players playing next to him, Luke.
No, I'm saying you speak to people about Harry Kane.
I'm not saying in any shape or form that every time you play with someone better, that you're going to become a star. You're going to improve. If you're not going to improve, you're not good enough to be at the football club. But you need to have an opportunity to play against better people. It's the same. You can play under 21 football all you want. Until you get into the seniors, a completely different ball game. You need to be able to learn that. If we're not given those opportunities, those players aren't going to progress and get better. We've just riddled off all those players from Man City. They've left the club. Someone's took a gamble on them and turned them into world-class fucking footballers. Cole Palmer weren't anything.
With Mikey Moore, for instance, what a lot of people, and this is why I think we're changing, what a lot of people don't realise about Mikey Moore. Mikey Moore's almost played as many first-team games as he has under 21 games. He's not played against people older than him. All he's done is play against people that his age, that he is miles better than. So what happened was, he was in the under 18s and smashed it. He then went up to the under 21s. He got an injury, then started training with the first team, didn't play for the under 21s and kept training with the first team. And then they dropped him down on a few occasions to keep him fit. He's actually not played much under 21s football. So if he was 18, 17 playing against 21-year-olds, that's big difference than playing against people that are his age. That's why if you look at the under 21s, and every week now I'm tweeting it, because Janai Byfield is 16 years old and he's starting every week for the under 21s. Luca Barnett is starting every single week. Tyrone Thompson, I think he's 17, starting every single week. So now they have the ability where they're playing against players that are 4 or 5 years older. Physically, they are 20, but they're not men, but they're getting there. If he was to then step up and play in the first team, they're already used to playing people that are bigger than them, stronger than them. They've got a way of, but we haven't done that enough. We've been worried about like under 21s. Well, let's play all our 20-year-olds and then they'll have a decent season. That's not how it works. We need to be winning age groups. Like when we've started to do that, there seems to be changes that are happening that are being looked at. And I agree. I think Fabio Paratici made the wage structure change that was required, which meant we kept the top level player. of certain age groups, because that was why we kept losing Madueke and et cetera, et cetera. But you can keep paying the youngsters what they want, but effectively some are going to go, well, we need to see where we're coming in here. We need to see where there is a place for us to come in. And I think that's why we go back to the Savinho deal. Unless we're going and getting players that we think are number one targets, why go and get number 3, 4, and 5? Why not just try and see if and Frank will bring him into, because that's another part of learning, right? You have to be in a structured system. You can't be in what Ange Postecoglou's was chaotic, and it was a negative atmosphere. They're not the kind of atmospheres that you want your young players to be involved in. You want them more structured. You want, as I say, a frank atmosphere. Sounds to me like it would be perfect. You're going to go in there. You're going to know what your job is. You're going to have experienced players around you that are going to help you along the way. And that's all part of it. But we seem to have just done this all the wrong way in terms of the youngsters are being signed and like Archie Grays, but they're being signed to stopgap the youth that we don't have because they're not quite good enough. What we need to do is, if we get in 2 or 3 years' time, Barnett's good enough, Byfield's good enough to be able to be in and around it, hopefully then that puts us on. And then the ones that we're signing that are really young and as you said, like 12 years old, 11 years old, they are then the ones that are next ones breaking through, etc. So I feel like we're looking better. The direction of the club's looking better at its youth. And I think Frank will be a good part of that personally. But I think we need to keep doing that. That needs to happen.
Yeah,
I think problem is though. The problem is sorry, Chris. The Premier League has become so competitive, right? That back to the very original point, which was the Owen and Rio Ferdinand interview about everyone. There's this demand, to win now. You've got to try and get in the Champions League, which is only the top 5 teams at best, and there's 8 teams competing for that realistically. And you even look at Arsenal, right? So look at Arsenal. Lewis Skelly came into your earlier point, Luke, and now an Airy. And Lewis Skelly did a great job, broke into the England squad. We spoke about how he's one of the best left backs in the league. Absolutely took his opportunity, played against Real Madrid. He's been dropped this season. Calafiori's come back from injury. Lewis Skelly hasn't started once, right? So, that just proves that point of, that sort of, and our kids are nowhere near Lewis Skelly's level, right, in terms of talent. And Lewis Skelly has been dropped straight away. And that's what we're competing with. So,
and they spent 60 million on another player that plays there.
Yeah, exactly. So now Lewis Skelly's probably, his third choice, right? Because they'll probably put Hincapié out on the left back. So this is what we're competing against. When we're talking about our own academy progression, is in reality, if we want to finish top 5, we can't afford to give any of these players chances in the league. We're going to just have to play them. When we play Doncaster, I think that's your opportunity to bring in certain players. Although actually we've loaned everyone off, we'd probably pick, to be honest. But that's where the likes of Tell and Odegaard, etc., will need to play for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Is that with regards to these young players that are coming in, sometimes it is just a situation where everything fits right. So there's an injury, and then all of a sudden they're playing. They might not be playing against a club that are a huge level, and then it kick starts, and then all of a sudden it just rolls and rolls and rolls. And I think that happened with Kane, to be honest with you, because I remember watching Kane when he first came in, and he was dreadful. He just kept scoring, and but he was scoring against like terrible teams. And then it was just like he just kept getting better and better and better. But I remember there being clips out of when it was I think it was the under 21s or must have been younger, must have been under 19s, and it was in the Spanish squad. And they were literally talking about, I think his Wink and Skips have both been like that, where they've gone, he's unbelievable, but he was like 16, 15 at the time. But he's just not got to that level. And again, I think with Winks, I think Winks had an ankle injury, which has plagued him for most of his career, but specifically with Skip, some of the stuff that these managers were saying about him, like future Tottenham captains and like something we've not developed him right. I'm not saying that he would have gone on to become a Tottenham captain or anything like that, but we haven't developed these players correctly because they had so much hype when they were younger that they haven't delivered. And is it something that we've just been so... I think Pochettino was probably the last manager that really looked at youth and said, this is where we're going to kind of go with it. but it is harder because we want to win now. So it's a catch-22. If they don't win now, then it becomes a problem. That's why I always felt that the League Cup this year was almost going to be a bit of a buy for Frank, because if we got knocked out of the League Cup last year, it'd have gone as a chance to win a trophy. Why have you done that? But where we've just won one, it was almost like, for me, it would have been in expectations where them lot down the road. I remember back in the day when you knew every single Carabao Cup game was going to be Arsenal's under-21s. And then all of a sudden, the Fabregas come out of it, and the Wilsheres come out of it, and you was like, these look like players. They're playing against men, and then that's when they almost kickstarted their Arsenal careers. So I think that we need to be so much better with managing it. Even the loan system, our loans have been so ridiculously poor over the years. Dane Scarlett, just look at this.
I agree with that.
This guy's been out on loan for seven clubs and played 4 games, and you're just like, who is sitting there agreeing to these loans? Even Alfie Devine, was it not last year, the year before, had a fantastic loan spell at Port Vale, and then we pulled him out and said, no, go Plymouth the second half of the season. Sat on the bench for that. We need to be so much better at developing our young players, and it could be down that they're not good enough, and I don't think some of them are. Like some of the stats of like the under-21s, Ajay I always use. Ajay come in and was superb, but his statistics in the under-21 league was so below average. It was like he was never going to come in to an unsettled team and be the guy you give the ball to and him can like go and score loads of goals. That's just not what sort of happens. Just wanted to see.
Hopefully Frank's that manager though that gives the under-21s not the opportunity, but even if he says to them, look, show me what you can do, and I will give you I will give you a chance. It might not be this year. The ones that have stayed in the 21s, show me what you can do. And that should be any manager that comes in, that should be your message to the under 21s. It should be a case of, I'll be looking at you throughout the season and give me a reason to think, do I have to put this boy in my squad for the weekend? And that's how it should be. Because otherwise, if there's no, I think with Ange, there was never going to be a hope for any of the kids. So there's no real, what's the word I'm looking for? They're going to just be like, well, we're not going to play the first team. So we either go out on loan and just have a we might not play, but we'll just go, just to go because they like the city or the club. And again, I go back to that Henry Lansbury. He said he went to a few clubs because he was like, it sounds like a really good place to go and stay and try it out. And he was like, the amount of times we'd win, then we'd go out on a night out and stuff. He said, and end up really enjoying the towns and the places that he played for. It was more to go and play first team football and just be in and amongst it rather than playing in the 21s.
Yeah, I think you can only learn a certain amount out of the 21s football. 100%.
Yeah,
I've always said, especially with young players, is that the level isn't really that imperative. Like, especially for an 18-year-old, like it's not that imperative to be playing at the highest level they possibly can. I'd rather them go and play every single game in a League Two than play 50% or 25% of games in the Championship, say. So I think that kind of happened with Donnelly. I think a lot of people were saying Donnelly should be playing in the first team this year, and he's gone to the Championship. I think that's a much better move for him. But again, 100%. That's a longer term thing, which I think we've looked very short term at a load of stuff. And that's why Vuskovic surprised me, because I thought Spurs were going to go, he probably will develop better if we send him out alone. But actually, if we keep him, he's another club trained player. So we'll just do that and it will stagnate him. But actually, we'll be able to utilize him somewhere else. Whereas for me, it's kind of like, oh, that's a longer term. You've looked at it and gone, all right, he's going to develop better that way. Let's do that. And we'll worry about the homegrown stuff coming from youth players or like from the academy or whatever. So I think it is really it is a positive at the moment, but I think I'll caveat that with Spurs and go like, did we just stumble across this, and actually is that a pivot, and how we're going to change and do it going forward. We'll be wrapping up ever so soon. It is 11 o'clock, but I did want to touch on the Champions League squad, which was what we was originally going to talk about when we first set out the podcast. Obviously, Tell has been dropped. There was sort of a lot of conversations in the fan base around, mostly believed it would be Odebear that would be dropped, but it was almost a case of Odebear or Tell. But then there was also a big question around Kinski. I felt personally it was wrong to drop both Dragusin and Takai, because I think we're very short at centre-back now. However, that is dependent on whether either of them are going to return from injury. I seem to think that one of them would be back within a couple of games, and therefore, at the moment, Van der Ven, Romero, Danso, and then you're going to Ben Davies and potentially Gray. They're the only 5 players that have ever played centre back in our squad at this moment in time. So 2 injuries, and all of a sudden you're probably your 6th or 7th choice pairing at the back. Do you agree completely with all of the decisions that Frank made? Would you have, because there is the ruling, there's been some confusion around the goalkeeper, but if you didn't select Kinski and Vicario got a long-term injury, you could actually have called Kinski up. So a lot of people are saying, well, what was the point in calling him up in the first place then? Because he's only going to play if Vicario doesn't and he's injured. Gary, did you completely agree with the squad choice? And if you don't, what changes would you have made?
I probably would have gone with Tell over Odegaard. I think he's slightly better player, in my opinion. But that also comes to the fact that we have spent £30 million on him. Worries me slightly again that we've spent money on a player that's potentially we don't think is good enough to play in the Champions League. So what's the point in spending that money on him if those who've recruited him, if that's how they feel? I would have personally gone with him. I think he's shown more than Odegaard for me. I do like Odegaard anyway, but I think I would have gone with that. Centre-back wise, slightly concerning, but it might be the case there's some changes made in January of the next registration, and let's hope that we can keep everybody fit. Don't particularly want to see a scenario where it's Ben Davies and Danzo at centre-back, but there's obviously going to be possibilities that might happen. Wasn't too worried about the others. I thought it was quite normal that the injured players, were never going to be picked anyway. So just the Tell was the big surprise for me. I would have picked him personally. However, I guess looking on the other side, the players we have signed, Kola Moani can play out there. So can Javi Simmons. So can Kudus, Richarlison. So in a way, I can understand why they haven't, but I'm not sure how the player feels that he's just made this big move and he's not in the Champions League.
Yeah, completely agree. Connor, what would you have made? Any changes? Was you happy with their decisions that you made?
Yeah, I think with the goalkeeper one, first of all, it would have been sod's law for us, wouldn't it, that Vicario got a 29-day injury rather than a 30-day injury, and we couldn't call up another keeper, and Austin would have to play, that 2 Champions League games, which out of 8 might have made the difference. Although, to be fair to Chris's point, Austin actually did fill in pretty well last season, but then had a poor preseason. But anyway, so that didn't surprise me. I think with the Tell one, that almost proves exactly what we said in terms of the fact that Tell was a club signing. The fact that Frank is not picking him in this Champions League squad completely supports that. For me, I can see why he has gone Odegaard, actually, because I think Odegaard just offers you a different profile compared. I think Kolo Muani has killed Tell, to be honest, because I think it's that man who can play up top or out on the left, and he's better. And so Odegaard is your sort of more traditional dribbly winger, real out and out winger out on the left. So I think that's probably been the thinking. But to be honest, realistically, I don't think, given Johnson's being picked at the moment ahead of Tell and Odegaard anyway, out on the left, and we know that that's not Johnson's position, and he's done nothing. If he doesn't score, he doesn't really impact the game. So we've got players that can play out there, haven't we? None of them are good enough. We all wanted to sign a left winger, but you got Muani, Richarlison, Odegaard, Simmons can play out there at a stretch. Johnson obviously can at a stretch. So it didn't surprise me. It tells me that Dragishin's injury must be quite bad as well, because for him not to be in, or perhaps they just thought, we're not sure how fit he's going to be when he does come back, because it was such a long-term injury. So yeah, I think I probably would have gone for the same squad. I think what it does show, though, given the players are out, I mean, he would have had some real headaches if Kulusevski and Maddison and Dragishin were all fit as well, right?
And he will in January, because especially Kulusevski looks like he's back in January. So
yeah, you'd think Kulusevski comes in for Odegaard maybe in January, doesn't he?
I don't know if he'll be ready for that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
'Cause
don't think he'll be ready.
he's due back in Feb apparently, and his injury is that
Feb now, is it?
bad.
Okay, God.
It's that bad, his injury. That he's going to be the same as Dragusin. The injuries that they're coming back from are not overnighters when you get back. It's going to take time to
No,
build your body back up, get your mental frame back, to trust your body again. We ain't going to see the best of Dragusin, if we're going to see the best of him, and Kulusevski, till next season. If we get them on the pitch and they get minutes in the second half of the season, then that's a bonus for us, and it's a bonus for them, because you've got to worry about their mental states when they're not allowed to do what they get paid to do, which is play football, because they're out injured. For me, I'm going to repeat. To me, it's poor planning, and this goes back years and years of poor planning. We've ended up with a squad where you have to select a squad. We can't select a squad of 25, and we've also got a list of foreign players like that long that you could only have that many in, and therefore people were always going to miss out. I, for one, would have gone in with 3 goalkeepers, because last year we had to use 4 in Europe. I see what's his name? Austin is homegrown, but then also as well, Austin I see him very clearly as our third keeper. I see Kingski probably getting 2 run-outs. I think the 2 home games against the lesser sides, and I can't remember we're playing as the lesser sides, but whoever the lesser, it's not Dortmund and ain't Villarreal.
Sparta Prague and Copenhagen, yeah.
Okay, so Sparta Prague and Copenhagen, I can see Kingski probably playing them 2 games in the European games. He probably play them 2 home games, so he gets a run out. Because the one thing you can't do with Kingski wants to challenge Vicario as a number 1 goalkeeper. Kingski ain't happy to come to sit on the subs bench. He wants to challenge, and if he's going to challenge, you're going to have to let him have some game time. So, for me, it was always going to be one player was always going to be left out, because we were never going to pick. Is he still at our club? But the number 8. He was never going to get selected in the European squad, was he? The number 8. So, and he's still at our club because the Turkish window hasn't closed yet. So it was obvious that one player was going to miss out. And yeah, everybody's idea was it was either going to be Tell or Odegaard, and it was like a flip of a coin. You paid 30 million for one, you paid 25 million for the other. It's a toss of a coin who you're going to leave out.
Chris?
Yeah, I feel the same. To me, it makes no odds if it's Odegaard or if it's Tell. Either one, to be fair. They're going to get some minutes. They're not going to be a star, but it was always going to be either one. But for me, no preference really.
Fair enough. And then we will be wrapping up now. I just want to know, what are our thoughts now? Obviously, the transfer window has ended. Some suggest it wasn't enough. I think I agree with Connor. My assessment of the window is kind of a 7, and I think someone's just put it in here, saying that we've had a really good window on paper. We've strengthened, but in reality, a few injuries, mid-table is a good finish, because we are kind of back to where we were. I mean, if Palhinha gets injured, we don't have anyone that can really come in and cover that position, because they didn't do it last year. And obviously we've brought in some attacking talent now, but centre back, and left back really is a worry. If we get an injury to a fullback, we've essentially got 2 fullbacks for the whole season, because I'm sure Ben Davies is kind of in the squad more for an experience point of view. I don't think Frank would want to be playing him that regularly. So what are our thoughts for the season? Where do we think we should be looking to progress? Now we know obviously what everyone else has done, what Liverpool, Newcastle, Villa have done. Obviously there's so many different caveats to that, but Gary, where do you see Spurs, and where do you expect Spurs to be come towards the end of the season?
We're still light in important areas, mainly left back, left centre back. If we'd have improved there, I'd be probably higher than the 7 I've given it. But I think the 7 is probably about right. I think we're still sort of light in that area. A couple of injuries, and we're really struggling. For me, if we can reach top 7, 7 or 8, I'd be delighted. I'd like to see us go in a cup, whether that be the League Cup, FA Cup. No preference, but I'd like to see if we can challenge for at least one of those. But yeah, hopefully if we can get ourselves to January and then relook at this centre back issue, left back issue in January, we've been lucky. But let's hope we can get through these 4 months.
Connor?
Yeah, I think it somewhat depends on injuries, right? And to be fair, look, I think some of those other squads outside of the top four are not that thick either. And so who knows how Newcastle are also going to cope with having to play Champions League as well as everything else as well, and they'll have issues in their squad if they get certain injuries, right? So
Not just
you know,
Newcastle. I think this is really underrated. There's so many English teams in Europe this year that haven't played it or haven't played it in such a
100%.
long time that we see a big drop off.
I think that's right, and I think so. So results like the Bournemouth one. I know European football hasn't started, so you can't really use it as an excuse yet. But Bournemouth will beat a lot of teams. Those types of teams. That's just going to happen. So look, I think if we get, I think we could finish anywhere from fifth to eighth. Probably, I think that it just depends on how lucky we get with injuries. I think our starting 11 when we're at full strength now, I think is good. I think our defence actually, ironically, given how many goals we conceded previous season and stuff, but they never played together, right? I think our defence is actually a top four quality defence on when they're all playing. If Simmons and Muani can hit the ground running as well, they're top players. So yeah, I think it's anywhere from fifth to ninth. The cups will just depend on who you get, right? So you get Liverpool away in the third round of the FA Cup, you're probably going to go out. But if we can get some fortunate draws, I think we could have a bit of a run at the cups. And then the Champions League, we should definitely get through to the. We might not finish top 8, but we will finish top 24, so we'll get through to at least the knockout game. And then actually, I think, to be honest, because of the way that Frank sets up teams against better teams, we've seen it against City and PSG already. I think we could be interesting in the Champions League. We're not going to win it, obviously, but I think we'll give some teams a hard game over 2 legs when we set up in that way with, Paulinia and Bentancur or Sarr, and being very stable. So, yeah, it'd be interesting.
I had Euro expert or Alex Barker, some of you'll know, on YouTube. He works for the Athletic. He does great tactical breakdowns and sensible transfers as well. And that was one of my points to him about Frank. I actually said that I think Frank is going to be too adaptable for Spurs fans, that he's going to be like, we go into Wolves away and he's going to be adapting and changing it. And Spurs fans eventually are just going to go, look, we're Spurs, we should be going there and they should be worrying about us, etc. And I said, that's my worry. And then he went, actually, I've only thought about it as a positive. For instance, if Ange was in the Champions League, I would have thought he'd really struggle, but he'd beat all of the worst teams. But with Frank, I think he'll actually do better against the better teams because he will be able to set up almost like a Brentford style. So I was like, I didn't even think of it that way. So hopefully a little cup run in the Champions League wouldn't be nice, but I'll take an FA Cup if we can, I'm sure. Jose, over to you. What are your expectations for the season?
Before the season started, people that hear me and on these spaces and that, I turned around and said that last year I felt that we were 5 players light at the end of the transfer window last summer. And all I wanted is, before the transfer window this summer, all I wanted is to go into this season and not be embarrassed, because finishing 17th last year was gut-wrenching. And I just didn't want to be embarrassed. I wanted to have a better season and not feel the way that I felt last year. And I think that to some degree, the players that we've brought in the summer help us so much and improve us as a side. And with Thomas Frank, I mean, we knew before he even came to the club that he's an excellent tactician, a great manager, great coach of players, better, and he makes players better. We knew this. He's now at our club. We should be grateful that we've got him. It's probably the most important signing we've made for years, is the manager. And for me, the way that I've seen us play the first 4 games, so the PSG in the first 3 league games, he's played differently on every occasion, and he's set up differently, and you can see the patterns of play are different. And so, to me, we're going to be in for a good ride. I think we'll be a lot closer to the dining table than what people believe. I think that top 8, quote me, should be a given. We are Tottenham Hotspur. It should be a given. But the added ingredient of having Thomas Frank and some of the players that we've bought, because I like Connor says, we got a top 4 back 4. I believe that when you have your top 3 or top 4 players up front, we will have a top 4 there as well. Because for me, whether it's Moani, Simmons, Kudos, Solanke, them 4 players frighten anyone. They're as good as a lot of the other teams around us and above us. For me, it's just a case of the luck of the draw. Players remaining fit. For the last 2 seasons, we have had horrendous injury issues, a lot more than other clubs have had for 2 seasons non-stop. If we get a bit of the rub of the green with the injuries and we don't get long sustained injuries, and before I even could say that, Maddison got injured straight away. I think that if we can keep a decent team out there and fit and healthy, I think we're in for a good season. I'm not going to quote where we're going to finish in the Champions League or any of the cups or any of the leagues. I'm just saying that we should definitely be top 8. I can see, like last season you had teams that over-excelled, so to speak, and some teams that underperformed. And I think you're going to get that again this season. It'll be interesting to see how Forest and Palace get on in playing in Europe. It'd be interesting to see how Newcastle get on in playing in Europe, and Villa as well. It's going to be interesting because there's teams that people will say in around the 5th and 8th place that people are going to say that we're going to be competing against. It'll be interesting to see how they fare in Europe as well. I am never going to go against my team. People know that already, and I'm looking forward to a positive season. That's what I'm going to say.
If we was to go off Jose's predictions, Spurs win the league unbeaten and don't draw a game because he's never backed us to lose. We win every single week. That's how much of an avid fan.
I never go for a draw. I never go for a draw, and I never go for a defeat. But can I say that the first 3 games of the season, I predicted the correct score for the first 2 games? I got the Bournemouth one wrong, but I predicted the first 2 correctly.
Love to see it, Chris. What are your thoughts on the season? Where do you think we'll finish, my man?
Nah, I totally agree with what Jose just said there. Just not to be embarrassed performance-wise. Hopefully, we just turn up, play exciting football. Realistically, I think top 8 is where we're gonna finish. Obviously, the higher up we are from 8th, it'll be a nice little achievement. And then just be competitive in the cups again. Try and get to the later stages. Try and get to a final again because we've tasted it now. We know what it's like to win. Let's just keep bringing them. Let's just keep going for it. Let's not take your foot off the pedal when you're winning. So, Champions League is obviously going to be a different ball game altogether. So again, competitive, not embarrass ourselves, and just show a good account of what we can do, and just hope and try and keep progressing in every round as much as we can.
Yeah, the chat seemed to be very much agreeing. Like 5th to 8th is sort of the expectation. 8th and a cup would be absolutely incredible. Guys, we are going to wrap up to very, very shortly. Appreciate all of the support from everyone. We've got 77 likes, so we need 23 more likes. We've got nearly 250 people in the building. So please, 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 if you haven't already done so, go and like the video. Obviously, subscribe to the channel. All of the links for the guys, whether it be X or YouTube, is also in the chat. So please make sure you go in and like in and sub in to the guests as well. Last Word on Spurs are currently live. They've got Paul O'Keefe on, and apparently Langer asked Aston Villa about Morgan Rogers. Langer was told by Villa unequivocally no, and then when he asked about the price, was told that it would start with an 8. Assuming that's 80 million and not 800 million. But I've just seen something funny. Billy T on X has just put up, imagine someone went into a coma in May. Since then, Spurs have won a European trophy, finished 18th, sacked the bloke who did it, hired a new manager, Son has left, Xavi Simons has signed, and Levy has gone. You'd wake up and you'd be absolutely delighted hearing all of that. So, yeah. Very, very funny. Guys, massive, massive thank you to everyone for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. It's been a good one. As I said, when I sent you all a message saying, do you fancy coming on? This is what we're talking about. It couldn't have been any further from what we've basically discussed for 95% of this pod. And I have a feeling that it's going to be a little bit like the Morgan Gibbs White and the Eze saga, where this one's going to be spoken about for quite a long time, especially with the old international break that we've got coming up. We just want to see our Spurs against West Ham Simons, I've seen it in the chat. So many people saying they can't wait to see how he gets on. Mawani obviously added to that as well. Guys, as I said, massive thank you for the support. Really appreciate it. Thanks to the guys on stream with me. Really appreciate it. And as always, last thing from me, come on, you Spurs. See you later, guys. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.